Hello, and welcome back to the Two Mics Podcast, the truest pod that has ever been casted. My name is Byron, your host, and I am so glad that you guys are joining us today, wherever you are watching or listening from, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, man. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm so glad that you guys are here. I'm super excited about today. I'm super excited about the guests that I'll have today. Listen, you guys do not want to miss this episode. Thank you guys for being patient with us as we got a chance to take a little break. The month of February is already absolutely insane. My baby is due in literally a few days. So we are glad that you are here joining us. But again, go on ahead, like, share, subscribe, tell your mama, tell your daddy where you're watching from. Let them know that they don't want to miss the Two Mics Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest in the building. I got my homie, my big dog, I was going to say cojones, but that don't sound right. The Kendall Crute is in the house.
I wish you would give God 30 seconds and break the chain. I wish you would give God 30 seconds and break the chain.
My man, I'm so glad that you're here. Everybody, please give a round of applause for Kendall Crute. Everybody, round of applause for Kendall Crute.
I appreciate you, man.
The man, not the myth, but definitely the legend. We're so glad that you're here. Mr. Neighborhood himself, my man. Okay, so
Should I tag that? Should I trademark that, Mr. Neighborhood?
Yeah, you should. Or you could change your name to like Rogers and like Mr. Rogers Neighborhood. I don't know. I mean, listen, we got the ideas going. Let's do a little bit of a background on just who you are, where you're from. People that might not know you. I know you as somebody that is not just a man of your word, but you are a man of your hands. You like to put your hands and your feet to action, in the creative ways that you are in the sports world, in all the things that you do. But give a little bit of synopsis for the people that are watching. Who is Kendall Crute?
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me on this podcast. I'm really excited about it. Man, so who am I? I would say that I'm a creative. I'll put myself in that category and in that space. I was reluctant before to do that, but I think it's accurate. And I think it's fitting. Being creative. I enjoy being creative with different things. So I would definitely say I'm a creative. I'm a person who enjoys community. I enjoy creating space for community as well. So I would say that's probably who I am.
And so now you have been able to create this space into your clothing line, which is the Neighborhood. Let's talk about that for a quick second. So the Neighborhood is essentially just the love child of what was Godly, which is what I really know because I got some of those exclusive pieces.
Sure.
What was that thought process going into Godly, then into the Neighborhood? Was that like a forced decision? Did somebody like buy you out? Which would be great if they did. How'd that work out?
Man, so the whole process with Godly, it was an incredible process. Even how it came to be, I literally just saw a vision of a shirt. I don't even know if vision is the right word. I just had the idea, I guess is a better word, of a shirt, just said Godly on it. So I made it. I had no idea the process of it, what to do. So I just made the shirt, got it made. People loved it. I was like, oh snap, this is pretty dope. Like people wearing the stuff. So that evolved over time, started creating different things and really started getting into the process of creating a brand. And so eventually another brand came out. I don't know if they started at the same time, before or after. I'm not sure about that. But they're called Godly as well. And I mean, down to, I put a period at the end of it. They had the same thing. So Shade Room actually ended up posting them. And so their following and their brand really started to blow up. And so I didn't want to be in a competition thing. I didn't want it to be something where people can't differentiate if that's my brand or somebody else's. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put Godly down and I want to start something different. Yeah. And so going into the process of putting one thing down and beginning the next, I really asked myself the question of, okay, what do I want this to be? Before with Godly, it was like, I just want to make shirts and put them out and that's it. Yeah. But growing through that process and evolving and getting more passion, a bigger desire for it, I was like, okay, I want this to be more than just clothing. So I said, I really want this to be a brand that has community, has a family aspect to it, has something that people can feel like they're a part of something bigger. So I was like, man, I think the perfect name for it is The Neighborhood, because I immediately thought back to all the different neighborhoods that I lived in. And they all just had a unique culture and just different demographics, different types of people, different economic statuses. So that's
if the neighborhood could have a tagline or something that's kind of say like, this is what the neighborhood would be. What is that?
Man, so I just changed it. Before it was a community that feels more like family, but I don't feel like that's like the best tagline for it and the real heart behind it. So I recently just changed it to where strangers become family. Because that's really what the neighborhood is like.
I like that. Strangers becoming family. I like that. So how are you doing that? I guess how are you doing that with your clothing? I know that obviously you have some certain pieces that stand out more than others. I know that by the time this video comes out, you might have just dropped even the Martin Luther King, I Hate Racism.
I actually have it on right now, man.
Is that it on right now?
Yeah, so this is just a sample. So there's like it's not perfect yet, but yeah, man, I actually got the samples in today. So I love, there's like some small tweaks to it, but overall, I absolutely love it.
How is that? How are you bringing the neighborhood together with your pieces?
Yeah, man. So I think really incorporating it into everything that we try to do. So for example, the pieces that we make, we came out with a collection called the Love Yourself collection.
Yes. I got that one with the red shirt.
Yeah. So we made a crew neck and we made a t-shirt. And even within that, our messages on our shirt, like one of them says, "You're doing better than you think." And then the other one had the number for the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Even what we put on our shirts is "Love Your Neighbor." We put that all over our stuff and all over our branding. And so really just trying to promote the heart of the brand in loving your neighbor, and also not being afraid. I think with the neighborhood too, like where strangers become family, even if you don't know somebody in the beginning, giving them that space, and both of you guys being in a place where you're like, I want to know more than just what I see on the surface. I want to take time and learn about who you are. Where do you come from? What is your personality like? And so really evolving from where you're just meeting somebody for the first time into you're like close-knit, bonded. And I know every relationship isn't going to be that way, but as far as being a part and buying a piece from this brand, we want you to know that, hey, even though we may not know you right now, you're a part of this family. So eventually we're gonna be family for sure.
So before we move on, make sure that you are going to WeTheNeighborhood.com.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
You can follow at We The Neighborhood. Follow at Kendall Crute to make sure you stay up to date, because you don't want to miss out on all the exclusive content. And I know that especially with the I Hate Racism, which I feel like is one of my favorite pieces. The desire is bringing people back together, and for people to understand that, it is. I know it's hard out here in the streets, but there's better for you, and so wearing that into a piece. Has Kendall Crute always been like this? Has Kendall Crute always been the love yourself, the hey, like we got your back, hey, don't worry about this, we can push through this together? Have you always been like this?
For sure, man. So I want to say that I have. In different ways. So even growing up, I played football in the inner city. My dad took me straight to the hood when I started playing sports. So I had a whole bunch of teammates. They lived in the projects. And so my dad, we were affluent at the time. We had a huge house, had our own bedroom, stuff like that. And so kids on my team, they had never seen anything like that before. So every single weekend, every Friday night, we would bring 2 or 3 of the kids from my team home to my house, and they would see a different side of life instead of just what they seen. Because I mean everybody knows the projects, and these kids, they were living in it. So I would bring kids home every single weekend, let them see the other side of life, and just let them know, even inadvertently, not really even fully understanding what I was doing, but I think in my spirit and in my heart, I knew I want these kids to see something better, and I want them to know that there's more to life than the drugs, the violence, and the lifestyle that they see when they're at home.
Let's talk sports for a minute. First off, go Dogs.
Go Dogs, man. National champions, man.
Go Dogs. Were you super hyped? Were you just like,
I was.
Because here's the crazy thing. Here's what I need people to like really comprehend. It's like, I mean, this has been a good year for Georgia. This has been a good year in sports, man. Like,
let's just take 30 seconds right here and just talk about this, okay?
Come on. Yeah.
There is such a universal pain. If you are from the city of Atlanta, if you are in the state of Georgia, there is a universal pain that each and every person shares.
Okay.
From the Braves blowing a 3-1 series lead last year.
Yes.
To the Bulldogs losing when they were up 21 to like 3 in the national championship.
Yep.
To the Falcons losing when they were up 28-3 in the Super Bowl. To the Hawks, never won an NBA championship, right? So there is a universal pain and suffering that Georgians and ATLians feel. And this year, first with the Braves bringing home the World Series, and then the Dogs bringing home the national championship. It is a phenomenal year for Georgia sports. We feel like the curse has finally been broken.
So the Hawks are doing it this year.
Huh?
The Hawks are doing it this year.
Ooh, I don't know about that one. I don't know if they do. Do, and I want to say this too, like there are people in Georgia and Atlanta, especially when the Braves won the World Series. I did not watch one baseball game all year, but when the Braves got in the World Series,
we in that thing.
I was at the parade. I had my Braves hat on, and I'm talking about when I was at the parade. There were people there. I know they don't know not one thing about baseball, but they're going to be unified with the city, and everybody was celebrating and happy to see a championship come to Atlanta.
You got to support, even when the team is, absolutely horrible. When they win something, it's like, you know what? I knew y'all boys could do it. I knew y'all could do it. That's how we was in Houston too. I mean, I know everybody be like they cheated, but when we won, I didn't watch one game until it got towards the end. So I'm totally with you. Let's talk sports for a second. So I know this, and I know this because we've done this podcast 8 times. But you are a real hooper. You are a basketball phenom. Like, I mean, you love the sport of basketball, and I know you love football as well. Tell the people about your story from basketball and that being what you gave your 2 mites in. Basketball being the thing that was your baby. That's what you was doing. That was your life. Sure. You had that goal set, and then it kind of got flip-sided, and now you're a full-time pastor. So obviously 2 different spectrums, even though some people think just because you can hoop, you can ball is a whole different thing. But how did that get you to the place you are now?
Yeah, man. So I grew up my whole entire life playing sports. I literally picked up a basketball at the age of 2. Yeah. And football was actually my first love. So I played football, played basketball. My dad, he grew up playing sports as well. So it was kind of just in my blood and in my DNA to play. I put a lot of effort, put a lot of time into it, literally working out over 6 hours a day for years. And so my goal and my dream and my desire was always to go to the NBA. I wanted to go and play at the highest level. And so I put so much into that. I was getting highly recruited out of high school. I was ranked number 56 in my position on ESPN at one point. I was top 10 in the state in the state of Georgia for playing. So it was a lot of time and effort that went into it, and a lot of my identity went into being a basketball player as well. And so coming out of that, right before my senior season, I got diagnosed with lung cancer at 17 years old.
Wow.
So when that happened, it really shell shocked me, and it made me take a step back and say, okay, even the first question you asked me, who is Kendall? Like, what do you want to be known for? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, you can average however many points per game, assists per game, all that stuff you want. Your stats can be amazing, but at the end of the day, what are you leaving behind, and what legacy do you want to leave? And so when that happened, it really shell shocked me and made me take a step back and look at my life as a whole. And I really realized in that time that I really needed the Lord as well. Because I was still miserable. I was still depressed, still insecure, still searching, still uncertain of myself and of my future. And I knew something was missing. And so on the hospital bed after my surgery, I ended up giving my life to the Lord. And the 2 mites that I put into basketball, I started to put my 2 mites into ministry. So
tell me about this process for a second. You're 17, 18 years old. Basketball was your life. Basketball was the thing you did. And then all of a sudden it was like, we not hooping no more. And I know that we find out a little bit later, even after lung cancer and things like that, like you were able to go into hoop. But I can only imagine as a 17-year-old knowing how much you need your lungs to hoop. And then all of a sudden knowing that can't happen. Was giving your life to Christ, because I think sometimes people will give their life to Christ when they feel like they're just, they're down on the luck and it's just like the thing that they have.
Yeah.
Was giving your life to Christ the decision that propelled you into knowing more about who you are? Or was giving your life to Christ that thing that, you were in pain? God, I want to give my life to you because I don't want to live this way and I'm done.
Yeah. So honestly, I think it's a little bit of both. I think the initial decision was from a place of like, okay, I'm broken and I'm really, really hurting. Yeah. So I need something different. I think that was the initial decision. Yeah. But as I walked out that decision, after I made that decision, it wasn't another decision or conversation after that. I made that decision and I said, okay, I'm going with this regardless. And so my now wife came into my life, and she brought me to her church. And so different things like that helped. But from that initial decision and walking out that initial decision is what helped me to find more about myself, about who I am, about my purpose, what the Lord has called me to do. Because honestly, at 17, I had forgot about the things that I used to do when I was younger, bringing those kids from the projects to my house and letting them see that there's another side of life. Right. And so realizing that this has always been in me, just in a different way and in a different context. And maybe it was just hidden and covered up and forgotten about for a season. But once I gave my life to the Lord, that childlike faith and that childlike understanding where I was like, I just want to help people and I just want to show people that there's a better way, that all started flooding back into my mind. And it made me realize that, man, like even the things I was doing with sports, that was just something that the Lord was using as a pathway to reach people and bring people out of where they are. And so definitely making that initial decision helped me find out more about myself through the lens of the Lord. So
you're hooping, you get diagnosed with lung cancer, and you now are in a place in your life where you're trying to figure out what to do. You meet your now bride, and she is a PK.
Yeah, she is.
And her parents have an amazing church in Georgia. How much of that relationship, not just with your wife, but also with your family, kind of, I guess, put you in the position now of being a pastor at that church?
Man, so it was huge. My wife, I was not saved like that. Like I was definitely still walking out my walk. I was not perfect in the slightest bit. I was still building my testimony. But my wife,
I like that, building my testimony.
Right.
Like
so my wife, she was unwavering in her convictions. She was unwavering in her beliefs, and she wasn't going to compromise on them. So what that made me do was it made me raise my level and my standard as well. If she's somebody that I really wanted to be with and saw myself marrying, then I knew, okay, this is the standard that's there. Yeah. So her having her convictions and belief forced me and made me find what mine were going to be and what my foundations were going to be.
Did you ever feel like having somebody that was so committed to Christ, did you ever feel like sometimes her Christianity was your Christianity? And I don't mean that in a bad way. Yeah. I just know that I've heard that a lot from people where, maybe they aren't as saved as somebody, and they get with somebody who is, fall in love with Christ or whatever, and then they kind of feel like, I'm just kind of leaning on the coattails of those people. I don't know if that was like that for you, but if it was, how were you able to get that relationship for Christ for yourself?
Yeah, man, it definitely was. In the beginning, it was. I would like raise my hand in church and like worship and stuff, like so she would notice and see. I'm like, oh snap! Like,
look at me, girl. You see me? You see the way I worship?
Right, right.
Worship.
So initially, it was that way, but I think the consistency of continuing to go to church, continuing to just be in the atmosphere, continuing to remove myself from other atmospheres that were hindering my worship while I was in church and hindering my walk throughout the week, removing myself from those relationships and from those atmospheres is what helped open me up to, okay, God, like, one thing is leaving. I'm leaving one atmosphere. I'm leaving one lifestyle and transitioning into another. And so initially I was kind of leaning on her faith, but then it became a place where it's like, okay, I want my own. Yeah. I see yours. I love how you hear for God for yourself, but I want to hear God for myself. And I want to know that I have my own relationship with him. And so I don't think it's a bad thing, like leaning on somebody's relationship for a time period and for a certain time. Yeah. But at some point it does have to transition where you're like, okay, I admire what you have. Let me figure out how I can get that myself. So her parents were a huge part of that as well. My pastors, they were huge in that for me as well.
Do you ever look back and think about the life you might have had if you would have kept pursuing in basketball and kept doing that?
So I think about it less now than when I initially left the game. I think every person has their moments and their thoughts like, man, like I could be making millions of dollars right now, living good, living lavish, not having a care in the world. But the thing that always humbles me and sobers me up is my lifestyle before I knew the Lord, and I was playing basketball and was fully enveloped in it. I was depressed. I was miserable. So I always go back to, if that thought ever crosses my mind, that would be great. That would be absolutely wonderful. But where would my soul be? And would I really know the Lord? And one thing that even when I left school to pursue ministry, one of the things that just always resonated with me was the Lord's not going to ask my stats. He's not going to ask how many points per game I average. He doesn't care about any of that. But what he's going to ask is, what did you do with what I gave you? Did you love me? Did you keep my commands? Did you live a lifestyle that was pleasing unto me? And I honestly don't think that some people can, and I'm not saying that all people can't, but for me, I don't think that I would have been able to be in that lifestyle and live a life that was pleasing to the Lord at the same time. So for me, I'm trying to make it into heaven at the end of the day. So all this stuff is passing away. So that's more important to me.
It's so funny because people that give their two mites, they always give their two mites. It's hard to not give 110% to one thing, and then when that one thing ends, to not end up picking it up and giving somewhere else. I know that for myself. I feel like God has shifted and moved in my life in different ways, but every single time it's like I gotta give him my all. Like I can't have. I can't give half. I gotta give 110. The whole reason, the whole idea behind this podcast came from a story in the Bible, which I know we've talked about before in this channel, but I'll give it just a little precursor. But there was a woman who had two mites, and she was a widow, which I always find that so funny that we don't know anything about this woman. We don't know her background. We don't know her lifestyle. We don't know her family. We don't know if she had a job. We don't know what she was doing, but only thing that we know that she was a widow. We know that for sure. And in Bible times, we know that if you were a widow, you probably didn't have anything to offer anybody anyways. And more than likely you were looking for your next husband because your husband provided, your husband was the person working, your husband was doing all this different stuff. And so for this woman not having a husband, she didn't have anything to give, but somehow, come on somebody, she still was able to give her all. And Jesus recognizes this woman after all these other guys are dropping in $100 bills and gold bars and all that kind of stuff. They're putting this money into the offering bucket, and they're doing it from a place of, I really hope Jesus recognizes me, because I really want him to like recognize me and be like, wow, thank you. Like he needs our money or whatever, or like he needs our time and our talent and our treasure. But for this woman, she gave from a posture of her heart that I'm not going to give 10% of whatever they were giving at the time. I'm going to give 110% of myself. And so when she puts the money in, Jesus recognizes her, talks to the disciples and says, listen, we need to be more like this woman because she gave her all in everything and in what she's doing. That is what I feel like my life has been like, and what I want my life to continue to be like. And for you, Kendall, how has 110% pushed you more into where God has placed you now in your life? I know that you're a pastor. I know that you're a creative. I know that you still hoop. I know you still drop 60 points in the rec league. Like we know that, you know what I'm saying? We know that, you know NBA players and you do all that kind of stuff, but in your life, in your everyday, how is it that you are still able to give 110% even with formerly having lung cancer, even with doors closing in your face and coming back from school and people saying no? Like, how is it that you're still able to give 110% in what you do?
Man, so I was actually reading a book not too long ago. It's called The Beautiful Resistance by John Tyson. And in the book, it's a super simple statement. And it's honestly something that I almost overlooked when I was reading it. but he's talking about the church, and he's talking about believers. But there's a line that he says in his book where he says, as believers, we have the opportunity to display the beauty of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but when I read that line, it just stuck out to me, and it's just resonated with me since.
Yeah.
That literally everything that I do, no matter what I put my hands to, I'm displaying Jesus.
Yeah.
And so whether that is in church, whether that's in ministry, whether that's in worship, whether that's in preaching, whether that's in a clothing brand, loving my wife, serving my wife, serving my family, my pastors, no matter what I do, where I go, what I put my hands to, what I start, I'm displaying the beauty of Jesus. And so for me, my question is always, am I displaying him to the best of my ability? And if people were to see this display, what would they think of him?
That's good.
And so that is what really pushes me to give my all in everything that I do, because I know at the end of the day, it's more than about me. The neighborhood, it's more than about clothing and fashion, in pieces. Me serving in church, it's about more than just getting people to come to church. It's about more than that. And so that phrase, we as believers have the opportunity to display the beauty of Jesus, is what just resonates with me whenever I start or do something.
So when this podcast is aired, it would have already happened because it's happening this Sunday. But this Sunday I'm preaching, and we're in a sermon series called Heaven on Earth. And this Sunday it's the mission of being heaven on earth and what that looks like. And in my sermon preparation, I've really been kind of struggling with trying to figure out, okay, what does really heaven on earth mean? Obviously, it's not just a song, but like, there's a place on earth. Like, it's not just a song, you know what I'm saying? And it's not even just an experience. It's a accumulation of a bunch of different things. And in my studying and in my realizing is, it's kind of like that book 67 mindset. This leader of mine, he said, I know there's 66 books in the Bible, but there's actually 67 books, because in the scripture it talks about how as Christians we're living letters, and how people are going to read the scripture from us. They're going to see Jesus in us. And so some people might not ever read the Bible, but they'll read your life. And so being that book 67, being that example of who Jesus is ultimately what we are called to do. And having heaven on earth, it's not trying to get heaven to earth. It's you being the piece of Jesus that people need to see. Some people might not ever get a chance to experience Jesus. We talked about this earlier, but just being like how, you know, it's crazy how, you know, the Bible talks about Jesus being the Prince of Peace. Yeah. But in order for you to experience peace, you need Jesus. You have to be able to experience him in that way. We call him a comforter, but until you need comforting, how would you know that he is the comforter? They call him a provider, but if you don't need provision, how would you ever know that he is the provider? So having these moments where, just like the widow woman, where we don't have anything, but somehow we are able to get everything because of who Jesus was and who Jesus continues to be in our life. Kendall, one last question before we go. For you and for the neighborhood and for all the great things that you guys have coming up here in this next few weeks and next few months. I know that you were saying that you and Brooklyn are trying to have babies, which is amazing. So he didn't say that, guys. It's a joke. All the different stuff coming up. How do you give your 2 mites? And I know you already talked about this a little bit, but how do you give your 2 mites here in everything else that you do? Yes, you are able to give your 2 mites in the things that you love. I feel like giving 2 mites in the things you love is easy. Like giving 2 mites to the neighborhood and to your wife and things like that is always awesome. But how do you give your 2 mites to the people that annoy you? How do you give your 2 mites to the people that are at your church, that go to your church, that maybe you're like, man, I don't know why they keep coming here. I'm tired of, you know what I'm saying? How do you give your 2 mites, and not just the things that you love, but in the things that you labor as well?
Man, I think having an understanding of where I was, and understanding that, I mean, every person needs some sort of grace, right? Yeah. So regardless of like where people are, even in the things that I don't love, even though I don't love it, doesn't mean it's not necessary or it's not needed. And that even goes for people. You can love people and not like them. So personalities may not mesh well, in how people act may not mesh well, but at the end of the day, that person is valuable to the Lord. That person is valuable and seen. And so if that person is valuable to the Lord, then regardless of how I feel or regardless of my thoughts and my opinions, that person is worth loving. That person is worth grace being shown to and mercy being shown to. And so even in the things that I don't necessarily love, understanding that there's still value in them, regardless if I fully see the value or not. Just because I don't fully see the value does not mean it's not valuable. I think about when people go to the thrift store. My wife loves to thrift, and her mom loves to thrift, and they'll go in the thrift store and that stuff in there is like $2, $3, $1,
Right.
50 cents. The people who had it before saw no more value in it, and they'll buy it and they'll put stuff with it and make it look like it's worth $100, $500, right?
Right.
And so I think it's the same kind of mentality and mindset with things that we do, and even people, is that even though we may not see the value in them, does not mean that that the value is not there.
Yeah, that's good, Kendall. Kendall, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you taking out the time. I appreciate you allowing us to get into your headspace, get into the way of what you're doing. So the neighborhood, we got more drops coming. Where can people go?
Sure.
WeTheNeighborhood.com, at WeTheNeighborhood, at Kendall Crute to get all the information. For
sure, man. Go follow all of those. Go to the website. These I Hate Racism hoodies will be out at that time. So I'm hoping that a lot of people get them. I think it's a really, really dope message, and we're releasing it on Martin Luther King Day to really honor his legacy and everything that he stood for and left behind. So yeah, man, WeTheNeighborhood.com, at WeTheNeighborhood, and at Kendall Crute.
Thank you again, Kendall, for tuning in. And thank you so much for tuning in to the Two Minds podcast. Go ahead and like, share, subscribe. Let everybody know where you're watching from today so that they can be blessed. My name is Byron. Follow at RIDEAUXX. The XX is for Two Minds. We appreciate you guys so much, and we will see you next Tuesday. Peace.